Victor Beaumont, a respected and discreet billionaire, is the CEO of Beaumont Industries, a successful multinational with diverse operations in technology, finance, energy, and more. Despite the shining success of his company, Victor feels an increasing distance between himself and his employees. Every meeting, every report, every interaction with his executives seems hollow, as if everyone is playing a defined role in front of him. Financial reports are exemplary, forecasts consistently optimistic, yet a lingering sense of unease gnaws at him. He suspects that behind this flawless facade lies a much darker reality. One evening, after a particularly frustrating meeting where his executives' answers seem too evasive, Victor decides to stay late at the office. He thinks of a way to see things from the inside, without being perceived through the lens of his CEO status. He recalls an anecdote his grandfather, a modest entrepreneur, used to tell him about visiting his factories incognito to better understand his workers' concerns. It is then that a bold idea comes to mind: disguise himself as an ordinary employee. With the help of his trusted assistant, Julian, Victor meticulously plans his new identity. He chooses the name Antoine Lefebvre, a common and nondescript name. Julian creates a fake application file for a low-ranking position in one of the company's less prominent departments. Victor picks an unusual but strategically clever role, that of a cleaner for the director's offices. This seemingly modest position will give him regular access to the private spaces of senior executives, allowing him to discreetly search through documents and observe behind-the-scenes interactions. Under the identity of Antoine Lefebvre, Victor begins his new role as a cleaner with meticulous discretion. Each day, he makes sure to avoid drawing attention while looking for opportunities to gather information. Every evening, once the offices are emptied, he conducts a careful observation of the smallest details that might betray hidden secrets. To refine his strategy, Victor employs subtle psychological techniques when he encounters executives in the hallways or common areas. He engages in casual conversations, listens attentively, and presents himself as an insignificant but curious employee. Behind this innocent facade, he gathers fragments of valuable information, gradually sketching a darker picture of what is really happening within his company. Victor Beaumont, under the identity of Antoine Lefebvre, begins to build connections with certain employees at Beaumont Industries. Among them is a man named Richard Delacroix, a charismatic yet morally dubious middle manager. Quickly, Victor realizes that Richard is one of the most corrupt cogs in the company. Intrigued by Antoine's subtle curiosity, Richard decides to take him under his wing, seeing in him a potential ally for his shady dealings. Richard starts to introduce Victor to the backstage of the corruption plaguing the company. He teaches him how to discreetly divert funds, hidden from view, using a series of offshore accounts and complex transactions. Victor, under the guise of Antoine, plays the attentive student, concealing his outrage behind a mask of compliance. Richard takes the lessons further by explaining how to manipulate financial reports to conceal embezzlement. He teaches Victor the art of falsifying balance sheets, creating fake accounting documents, and devising unrealistic yet convincing forecasts. These reports are carefully crafted to deceive not only internal auditors, but especially Victor Beaumont himself. The CEO, they believe, is a million miles away from suspecting what is really going on in his company. As Victor delves deeper into this world of corruption, he is horrified by the extent of the network Richard has built. Several once respected executives are, in reality, accomplices in this fraud system, each finding their own benefit. The more Victor learns, the more it becomes clear that his company, once his pride, is rotting from within in a way he had never imagined. However, while following Richard's lessons, Victor begins to formulate his own plan. He knows he can't simply expose the culprits without solid proof and a complete understanding of the corruption network. Thus, he continues to play the role of Antoine, gathering crucial information, noting every detail, and methodically preparing his counterattack. Despite the mounting tension, Victor knows he must remain patient. Each day spent under the identity of Antoine Lefebvre brings him one step closer to his goal: to clean not only the director's offices, but the entire Beaumont Industries of this systemic corruption. Victor Beaumont, under the identity of Antoine Lefebvre, continues his investigation behind the scenes at Beaumont Industries, but he soon discovers that he is not the only one facing moral dilemmas and pressures from corruption. Among the influential executives is Elizabeth Fontaine, a financial director known for her integrity and commitment to professional ethics. Elizabeth, despite frequent solicitations from Richard Delacroix and other accomplices, stubbornly refuses to compromise. Richard, aware of Elizabeth's unyielding integrity, tries several times to convince her to join him in his illicit activities. He offers her large sums of money and prestigious perks, but she systematically rejects his offers. Her refusal is not just due to moral principles. Elizabeth is deeply convinced that her actions could not only ruin her career, but also have disastrous repercussions on the company's reputation and its employees. Victor, closely observing the interactions between Elizabeth and Richard, is impressed by Elizabeth's strength of character. He learns that, despite her efforts to remain ethical, she is aware of the corruption around her and has, on several occasions, considered reporting irregularities, but has always feared for her safety and that of her family. As Victor befriends Elizabeth, he plays the role of a kind colleague while seeking to gather more information about her motivations and actions. He shares his own moral dilemmas, pretending to question the compromises one sometimes has to make in the business world. Touched by this supposed fellow victim, Elizabeth begins to share her own reflections on ethics and corruption, exposing her dilemmas without ever revealing her personal struggle against corruption. While continuing to observe and gather evidence, Victor faces a personal dilemma. He admires Elizabeth's resilience and wonders if his own actions, though aimed at ending corruption, might also contribute to a cycle of deception and manipulation. He begins to consider a more direct approach to expose the corruption while protecting the innocent. One day, realizing his efforts to corrupt Elizabeth are failing, Richard decides to take more extreme measures. He plans to frame her by setting a trap, falsifying documents to implicate her in a fraud she did not commit. Victor, now aware of the threat this trap poses to Elizabeth, realizes that he must act quickly to protect her while continuing to expose the truth. He decides to reveal his identity to Elizabeth, explaining the true nature of his mission and the gravity of the situation. Together, they devise a plan to thwart Richard's machinations. Though shocked by the revelation, Elizabeth agrees to cooperate with Victor to prove her innocence and expose the corruption that is poisoning the company. Victor Beaumont, under the identity of Antoine Lefebvre, and Elizabeth Fontaine agree to implement a strategy to gather irrefutable evidence of the corruption within Beaumont Industries. Their plan involves several crucial steps to expose the illegal practices and protect innocent people while ensuring their own safety is not compromised. Elizabeth, with her role as financial director, has in-depth knowledge of the company's finances and suspicious transactions. She begins to discreetly share with Victor sensitive files and compromising documents she is aware of. Together, they identify the key players in the corruption, including Richard Delacroix and several other executives. To avoid suspicion, Victor continues to pose as Antoine Lefebvre, the cleaner. He uses his privileged access to the executives' offices to secretly install hidden microphones in the meeting rooms and the senior executives' offices, including Richard's. He knows that the most compromising discussions often take place in these spaces. The devices record incriminating conversations where Richard and his accomplices openly discuss their embezzlement, manipulation of reports, and attempts to intimidate those who refuse to join them. Victor collects these recordings and stores them safely, knowing they will be crucial in confronting the culprits. With the help of Julian, his trusted assistant, Victor sets up a digital data retrieval operation. Julian, an expert in cybersecurity, discreetly infiltrates the computer systems of Beaumont Industries to access suspicious transactions and private communications among the corrupt executives. He retrieves hidden files, deleted emails, and traces of fund transfers to offshore accounts. This digital data provides a clear picture of the illicit financial flows and the concealment strategies used by Richard and his accomplices. As the evidence mounts, Victor and Elizabeth realize the extent of the corruption that has plagued Beaumont Industries. They know they must act quickly before Richard becomes suspicious. Once the evidence is consolidated, they arrange a secret meeting with the board of directors, inviting independent investigators and a public prosecutor to join them. Victor Beaumont, revealing his true identity in front of the board, creates a moment of complete shock. The silence is palpable as everyone realizes the scale of the betrayal within Beaumont Industries. Elizabeth Fontaine, standing beside him, remains composed, confident that they have done what is right for the future of the company. The evidence is damning. The audio recordings of Richard Delacroix and his accomplices openly discussing their wrongdoings, the illicit financial transactions recovered by Julian, and the falsified documents are all presented in detail. Victor lays out a clear and unequivocal picture of the systemic corruption that has infiltrated Beaumont Industries, betraying the trust of shareholders, employees, and the public. The public prosecutor, invited by Victor and Elizabeth, immediately speaks up. He announces that, based on the evidence presented, an official investigation will be launched, and arrest warrants are already being prepared for Richard Delacroix and the other executives involved. At these words, Richard tries to protest, but he is quickly silenced by the prosecutor and the furious stares of his colleagues. The board of directors, shaken but grateful to Victor and Elizabeth for their courage, votes unanimously to suspend the corrupt executives with immediate effect. Their bank accounts are frozen, and the authorities are ready to intervene to arrest them before they can leave the premises. The company's security is tightened, and independent auditors are brought in for a full review of operations. Victor, although relieved to have put an end to this conspiracy, knows that the work is just beginning. Beaumont Industries must now regain the trust of its clients, partners, and employees. He announces the creation of a new ethics committee led by Elizabeth Fontaine, which will be tasked with overhauling the company's practices and ensuring that such actions will never happen again. Elizabeth accepts this new role with determination, ready to restore the integrity of Beaumont Industries. Victor, for his part, takes his place as CEO once again, but with a new perspective. He commits to being closer to his employees, ensuring that every voice is heard, and ensuring that the company he has built remains true to the values he has always advocated. As the culprits are taken away by the authorities, a new era begins for Beaumont Industries, marked by transparency, ethics, and a renewed commitment to turning the company around. Victor and Elizabeth, having gone through this ordeal together, know that the company's future is in good hands, and they are ready to face the challenges ahead with unwavering determination. A few weeks after the fall of Richard Delacroix, life at Beaumont Industries has radically changed. Employees, once immersed in doubt and mistrust, begin to feel a breeze of renewal. Under the leadership of Victor and Elizabeth, training sessions on ethics and transparency are organized, creating an atmosphere of trust and integrity. Victor, aware of the monumental task ahead, decides to hire an external audit firm to examine every aspect of the company's operations. The first reports are encouraging, though revealing of the many challenges that remain to be overcome. Beaumont Industries, once a fortress of secrets and wrongdoing, must completely reinvent itself to regain the trust of the market. Elizabeth, for her part, throws herself wholeheartedly into her new mission. As head of the ethics committee, she establishes rigorous protocols to prevent any future attempts at fraud. Her integrity and determination become a model for other employees, and she quickly gains the respect of everyone. However, she knows that the company is still under the watchful eye of regulators and the public. Tensions don't disappear overnight. Some members of the board, while grateful to Victor for his courage, remain skeptical about his ability to lead the company in the long term. To alleviate these concerns, Victor proposes an ambitious strategic plan to diversify Beaumont Industries' operations and invest in emerging sectors such as renewable energy and green technology. This strategic shift aims not only to restore the company's image, but also to position it as a leader in future-oriented fields. Meanwhile, the fallout from the judicial investigation continues to make headlines. The trials of Richard Delacroix and his accomplices are approaching, and the public eagerly follows every development. Shocking revelations about the extent of the corruption fuel a national debate on the accountability of large corporations and the need for stricter regulation. Victor and Elizabeth realize that they cannot move forward without addressing a fundamental question. How can they give meaning to their mission after everything they have been through? For Victor, this means returning to the basics: employee well-being, product quality, and commitment to local communities. For Elizabeth, it involves establishing a corporate culture based on transparency and accountability. Together, they decide to hold a major General Assembly, open to all employees, where they reveal their vision for the future. They present a detailed plan, including initiatives to support innovation, improve working conditions, and strengthen partnerships with NGOs and local associations. Victor's speech, filled with humility and sincerity, deeply resonates with the employees. He speaks of the importance of integrity, the need to learn from past mistakes, and his personal commitment to guiding the company toward a fairer and more prosperous future. At the end of his address, a thunderous round of applause erupts in the room. The road ahead will be long, but for the first time in a long while, a sense of hope and renewal settles within Beaumont Industries.